Hello everyone, Andrew Martin here, and welcome to my BCM Game of the Month for April 2013. As I record, we're in the middle of the fantastic FIDE Candidates Tournament, which is taking place in London. And after a slow start, the tournament has literally erupted with a whole raft of interesting games, as the players jockey to be the final candidate to play Anand later this year. The game I've chosen is the game between Magnus Carlsen and Carlsen-Grischuk, and this comes from the fourth round. Carlsen played the Ruy Lopez, and Grischuk offered the chance to go into the queenless middle game of the Berlin defence with knight f6, and White simply avoided it. d3, why hasn't this been played more often before? Well, it's a rather quiet solution to the problems of the position. White keeps the game complex by playing d3. There's going to be no captures in the middle early on, and he keeps the pieces on the board. I think that's Carlsen's intention, and also to play a slightly more original position than the rather dry type of game that arises from the queenless middle game in the Berlin, and a position from which Black has had considerable success in nullifying the advantage of the Ruy Lopez. But the disadvantage of d3, of course, is that it must be to allow Black to develop in easy ways. And Black takes this opportunity by putting his bishop on c5. c3, a very good move, threatening to hassle that bishop with b4 or d4 at an appropriate moment. Grischuk's not worried by that. Both sides castle, d6, and now pawn up to h3. Another characteristic Ruy Lopez move, securing the d4 square. If White wants to play d4 soon, he doesn't necessarily want to be hassled with the move bishop g4. So he just takes that move away from Black. So Grischuk played a6, putting the question to White's bishop. Now, Grischuk had played this position before, as we'll see. He played it against Karyakin in Moscow 2013. But quite an interesting game was the game Mickey Adams versus Vishy Anand from Baden-Baden in 2013. Where Black played knight e7 straight away. And the idea of this is to transfer the knight to g6. It looks as though White works up a standard type of advantage in this position just by taking the centre. But knight g6, that's not a bad square for the knight, eyeing up the f4 square in White's camp. And Mickey Adams struggled to get any advantage against this move. I mean, it may be that White can get some sort of an advantage with bishop d3 as played by Adams, or queen d3, threatening knight bd2. White wants the queen active before he develops the knight, or maybe just knight bd2 straight away. But this is just another way to play for Black, and the game Adams-Anand was drawn in 43 moves. Going back to our feature game, Grischuk hits the White bishop, and perhaps slightly surprisingly, Carlsen takes on c6, electing to damage Black's structure. Obviously, White can play in a more restrained style, typical of the Ruy Lopez, by just retreating the bishop. But this position is supposed to be okay for Black, based on the evidence of recent games. So Carlsen changes the pawn structure, and then plays very quietly with rook to e1. Now, in the game Karyakin-Grischuk mentioned earlier, White played d4 in this position, and after bishop b6, rook e1, Black was okay. I mean, Black can play h6 in this position. He can also play queen e7, strong pointing e5. Just to give you a flavour of what White's after queen e7, maybe takes, and queen a4 more or less forces Black to sacrifice a pawn. He doesn't really want to play bishop b7 or bishop d7. Those are misplacements of the bishop. So after knight d7, queen takes c6, rook b8, has Black got enough for his pawn after b4? The jury's still out on that one. Carlsen, going back to our game, just plays rook e1. Black plays rook e8 and knight bd2. White's trying to make it as hard as possible for Black to get his bishops going. And so he keeps the pawn structure intact and just begins to manoeuvre. Perhaps moves like knight c4 are on his mind, with knight a5 to come, or perhaps after knight c4, White can just consider bishop e3, trying to exchange off Black's active bishop on c5. That would be quite a good idea in this position. Exchanges in general should favour White. So black opens up the game here with d5, and that is a typical move in the open game. Just a freeing break, trying to open up perspectives for black's pieces. The problem with d5 is that when white takes with the pawn, as he did, black's got to recapture with the queen, in view of the weakness of the pawn on e5. And so we reach an unbalanced position here, where black has opened up the position for his bishops. He's got pressure against d3, but on the other hand, his pawn structure is quite ragged. So white plays knight b3. Black doesn't want exchanges. If he went the other way, then white could play bishop e3 and get the bishop off the board. c4 hits the queen, a very specific move, and now Carlsen plays bishop e3 with the clear intention of opening up the centre by playing d4. Again, this is an exchange which has to favour white, because then black will be left looking at 3 weak pawns on the queen side, and he has yet to find a decent square for his bishop. So strategically, bishop e3 is good, and Carlsen followed it up with d4. And black's got to block. I mean, I don't think he can open up the centre here. That would be absolutely fine for white. Knight comes back to d2. And now, perhaps slightly surprisingly, Grischuk plays a5. He could have been more direct here with the move f5. And I think after that, black is okay, you know. He has some decent chances. Whether white plays c5 straight away, black could put his queen on e6, preventing the knight from coming to c4 for the time being. Or he may just play, white could play queen c2 in this position, but now a5 is better timing. And if a4, black can put his queen on b4. So f5, I think, might have been an improvement on the game. Black played a5, white went a4, and only now did black play f5. c5. Grischuk puts his queen across on g6. Well, we can see why he does this. He's eyeing up possibilities against the white king side. But perhaps queen e6 would have been a better move, as suggested by Grandmaster Ramirez. And the point of this is to delay the knight coming to c4 for just one move, but black will use that move to try and muster his forces on the king side. For instance, maybe with knight f6, sack the pawn, and then try to get some attack against the white king. After queen g6, Magnus manoeuvres his knight into c4. Knight comes to f6, and now white plays bishop f4, restraining black. Well, knight e5 looks obvious in this position, but it turns out that white didn't do this because he was afraid of the unexpected rook takes e5. The point of that is to give the exchange, to entrench the knight on d5, and now black has f4 to come with a massive attack. White has relinquished his initiative, and now he has to defend for a long period. And he might not make it because black's attack on the light squares is going to be very strong. So Carlsen puts pay to that with bishop f4. Black plays his knight to d5, and now white has to give the other bishop here with queen to d2. Black's problem? Well, it comes down to this ragged pawn structure on the queen side. I mean, as we can see, a5 is already looking as though it's a goner. Bishop e6 by Grischuk. And now Magnus plays knight b takes a5. The thing about Carlsen is he's so confident about his technique that when he doesn't see any particular worries on the king side, anything specific, he just takes this pawn. And although white's coordination is destroyed for a little while when he plays this move, he's blockading the dark squares very securely, so it's really up to Grischuk to show what compensation he has. I think black should now definitely take this bishop. I mean, get the two bishops and play on with a move like queen f6. This might give white some problems realising his material advantage. White's got to think about black's pressure on d4. The move Grischuk plays you could classify as obvious, but it gives white the chance to reorganise. And this Carlsen does with knight e5 and just simply bishop h2. Now with c6 under fire, black really is struggling. And Grischuk gives the exchange in order to get his rook down on the 7th rank. Again, this is probably a necessary decision, but literally now there's no plan B for black. He's got to put white away with a direct attack, because white's plan is now becoming extremely obvious. He's just going to move his queen and then march the a pawn all the way up the board. Carlsen, as usual, is brilliant technically. He just tries to exchange off the rook. Grischuk doesn't want that, and now the queen comes into e6. e3, we have to do something like that, and the point of this is to threaten mate with queen to g5. So at least now black has 2 points in the white camp under fire. But now Magnus shows a second point to queen a6, the excellent point, rook to e2. This completely stifles black's attack on the second rank. Grischuk plays knight takes e3, and Carlsen is on top of the tactics after knight f3. The rooks are coming off, however black plays. White is delighted to see them off the board, and now rook b2 repels borders, both protecting g2 and hitting the bishop on a2. Bishop comes back. It remains for white to reintroduce his queen into the game, which he does elegantly with the move queen e1. All the way down the line, Carlsen is showing himself as master of the tactics in this game. Bishop takes f3 is simply answered by queen takes e3. So Grischuk protects his knight, but only for an instant. Knight c2, trying to mess white up, but queen f2, just completely on top. Bishop takes f3. Well, once again, you know, white's got it all under control. The knight is trapped in the middle of white's camp, and knight e5 is coming. So bishop takes f3, rook takes c2, and with his compensation at an end, Grischuk decided to resign. One of Magnus's great strengths is that he seems to make difficult positions look easy, and that was certainly true in this game. As I record, both Carlsen and Aronian share the lead, so let's see how this exciting tournament pans out.